Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is a surprise to hear this, but it is the reality. And there are lots of people, maybe even people you know and you're not even aware, maybe it's you, living paycheck to paycheck, just getting by, waiting for the next one to get a direct deposit so that you can pay bills and keep moving forward. We're going to look at that today and maybe how to make that change. Also, on the flip side of that, when you do have some extra, investing in your 401k and some best practices on that. He is the owner and founder of H&K Investment Group, LLC, and he knows all about that stuff. We've had some great talks in the past. Charlie Hardage is back with us on the program. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, Steve. Good morning. I'm doing very, very well.
Good to have you back here. And it's been a while. We've talked about a lot of things along the way. But the paycheck to paycheck thing is a reality for a lot of us. And, as I think of people I know, they're doing that. They're definitely doing that. What are your first thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, it's far too common, I think. I've definitely been in that position for a while, being in the military. And then after that, probably for another 3-4 years. It's stressful. It's frustrating. It's not fun.
Yeah, you never feel like you're getting ahead.
Right.
That's the challenge. And then when you are a little bit ahead, then you realize, we got to take care of that. Brakes on the car. It's been squeaking. I'll let that go another week. How can somebody reframe the paycheck to paycheck? Do you find that it's, a lot of times people aren't carefully managing their money and may have extra to work with and don't even know it?
Yeah, I mean, that's possibly it. I think every situation is obviously different. For us, it was, military and with a young family, didn't really have any extra. There's things that people could do, get side jobs or things like that, like a side hustle. And that can help, I think, at least temporarily, but then in some cases, maybe you're working 60 or 80 hours a week. And so I think, what really helped me, Steve, and, I obviously I'm in real estate now, and you have to have money to get into real estate, right? It's not free. And so when I got out of the military, we moved back to Nashville, got a job. It was kind of an entry-level job. Here I was, almost 30 years old, had some career experience in the past. I was in the military for almost 5 years, and I couldn't get anything but an entry-level job. I only had 2 years of professional experience, and the companies I was looking at did not, really. I mean, they're like, yeah, thanks for your service, but we don't count that as professional time. So I was like, well, shoot, I went back to IT sales. That's what I knew. My wife did work part-time, but we also had a 1.5 or 2-year-old, and so it was tough. It was really tough, and took a while, probably took a year or so until we were not still living paycheck to paycheck, but not stressed on how are we going to eat or how are we going to make a payment. And that was really frustrating. But when we kind of hit that, that 1 year mark and money was coming in, and we knew that we weren't in trouble necessarily unless there was a big expense. There's definitely some relief. But then what we started doing was investing in the 401k and an IRA. So essentially, we were still living paycheck to paycheck. We were just putting money into retirement, which I think is, possibly a mistake on why we, what we thought was the right option and right decision may not have been the best one for us. And I'm happy to get into that even more.
I totally hear where you're coming from, because you want to plan for the future, and I'm personally in between houses.
Yeah.
Sold a house, had to, a number of different reasons, and put an offer on another one right away. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is bad market. Um, wasn't the right situation. I wanted to so bad, but my gut said, don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm renting now, and friends tell me, even friends who are renting, and own houses, uh, you throw money away. I get it.
Yeah.
No, it hurts. I don't want to do it, but it is what it is for the moment. And I bring that up because in the 401k situation, you have a little bit of extra. You want to invest it somewhere relatively safe, so you got something on the back end. But it's like a vicious cycle going around and around.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on the 401k situation that you were in, what you would do differently, and if somebody is looking at that. And by the way, not everybody has an opportunity to do a 401k at their job. So it's like when you have it, it's like, I want to seize the opportunity.
Yeah. So yeah, great question, Steve. With 401ks, and IRAs too, but government has allowed those options really for to help people in retirement, right? And so back in the day, there's kind of three different legs to this chair for retirement. There's the 401k, an IRA. There's your pension, which doesn't really exist anymore, and then there's Social Security, which who knows what that's going to look like, right? So hopefully people are putting money into retirement like 401k or IRA. I think the problem that I have found over the last few years is that's you can't touch that until you're about 60 years old, right? Without penalty. Now there are some caveats there, but you can't really use that to get ahead in the meantime. If there are options, if you do leave a company, and you can roll that 401k over to like a self-directed account, and you can use that to invest in real estate or different asset classes. It's not at all commonly known because the big banks don't make money doing that, right? They
Wow.
lose money because you're not buying into their mutual funds and paying them money to have your account. So they don't really talk about that, but you are totally allowed to invest into your whatever you want, really, almost whatever you want, as long as you have the right account, the self-directed account. So
Never knew that.
Yeah. Yep. And I didn't know that.
They don't tell you that.
Yeah, I didn't know that until about 4 years ago either. And there's also something that I just recently learned about a few months ago called the 403B. It's exactly like a 401k, except it's for nonprofits. So you're able to, with 401ks and 403Bs, in some cases, you can roll that over to a self-directed account. With IRAs, you're able to do that because it's your account, your own account, and really get ahead. Now, I don't want to bash 401ks or 403Bs because sometimes you do get a company match, right? And so you don't want to give away that free money. So my thoughts and knowing what I know now is, invest in a 401k if they offer a match.
Yes.
And then as soon as you leave the company or organization, roll that over and invest that in for the long term, because stock market, very, very volatile, and doesn't really offer tons of benefits. It is passive, but in real estate, what we do, we also work with passive investors. So
Sure.
I think knowing what I know now, still would have done the 401k, but would have rolled it over 8 years ago, right, when I left the company. So as opposed to just letting it sit there, you don't really have a lot of control with 401ks, and you have a little more control with IRAs. But I do think that the big myth here, Steve, is that's going to provide a great retirement. I mean, possibly, but that's years down the road. That's when you're 60, and so to me, one of the best things to do is to invest that money and have that money work for you, as opposed to you always working for your money. Because if you're in control of that money and you can invest that money how you see fit, chances are you're going to be doing a lot better than if you were just to, put money aside in an IRA and 401k and have a modest retirement when you're 60.
Well, it's a great point you bring up that if things are tight, if you are getting a match from your employer, kind of worth trying to get something in there because it's free money. They're giving
Yeah.
it to you. You can't use it right now, obviously, but on the back end, all great. 403B, I have some friends that do live paycheck to paycheck and have actually taken loans out against their 403B, which has been a game changer, lifesaver for now. You're living in the now. There's repercussions of doing that, but at least you have the option if you need to.
Yeah. And that's actually a great point because on my podcast, I've actually spoken, it was two people this week. I've never heard about anyone taking loans out in a 401k to invest in real estate, but two people this week that I've interviewed, they actually both said that they did that, right? One person, he's like, look, real estate's the only way that we can make this work because he has several kids and they're getting older and so they actually took a loan out of their 401k so they didn't have to use all of their cash, and they were able to buy a property several years ago, which they still have today. And that property has probably doubled or possibly tripled in price over or in value over the last I think of 7 or 8 years. So that is an option that people can do. Now, I definitely wouldn't recommend living off of that. But if you do have a 401k or 403b, you could look at taking a loan out to invest into something other than the stock market. So don't want to say that's a bad route. I would definitely not live off of that. If you're going to take a loan out, do it to invest as opposed to do it to pay bills.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
I want to just make sure I got, the 403B, I live it through a friend. So I know, you can take a loan out against that. I want to confirm if you have a 401k, you can take a loan out against that as well.
Yeah, and so I don't know all the stipulations. If you are currently working with a company and have a 401k, I don't know if you need to get their input to take a loan out. However, if you have a 401k with a company and you no longer work there, that's your 401k. You can do whatever you want with it. So you can take a loan out. You can roll that over into a self-directed account. But yeah, again, this is not common knowledge. And one of the very cool things, Steve, about being in real estate for a few years is, I'm rubbing shoulders with ultra wealthy, right? Who not only is it common knowledge among the ultra wealthy, but they do it all the time, right? It's not like I've heard of it, but they do this all the time. So the wealthy, man, it's insane. They just have a totally different mindset on how to invest. And something else that they do, which is just fascinating, is a lot of them buy life insurance policies. So something happens to them, their family gets a death benefit. But what they do is they actually use the cash value. They borrow against the cash value and invest. So it's kind of like a double bonus points there, where worst comes to worst, they get their family gets a death benefit, but while they're alive, they're able to borrow against that and just grow their wealth faster than anyone can even imagine. So
Wow.
Yeah.
These crafty things that people do that we don't know unless you run in those circles.
Yeah, and it's all legal, nothing illegal about it. And there's very, very little risk with that too. And I think that's something that we, initially I thought wealthy take these massive risks, and they don't. They just know uncommon strategies to build their wealth.
So let's look at that for a second. That situation, the life insurance policy, so it's, double bonus, like you said. Can you harness the power of that tactic if you don't have a ton of money? Can you still do it on a smaller scale?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, and just to be clear with this strategy, you don't have to make hundreds of thousands a year. You don't have to be a millionaire or a billionaire to do it. And with these policies, so the way it works is you put, and by the way, I'm not an insurance salesman, so I just know about this because I've spoken to several people that do this. You could probably have a policy as low as $100 a month, right? Or maybe even 50 a month. Now,
Yeah.
the lower you have, and so the way that works, let's just use $100 a month. And I don't know the numbers, but let's say 15% of that goes to actually pay your insurance. Well, the other 85% of that goes into a cash value. So you could put $100 in today, $15 is insurance, 85 is cash value. You can go in tomorrow and borrow usually up to 90% of that money, that cash value. So essentially you're able to borrow about $75 or so, the next day, about 75% of that. So, and you do pay interest, but you basically pay interest to yourself is how that works. You're still getting the interest and dividends on that whole, $100 and all that. So it's fascinating. And I recommend, I'm happy to talk to anyone about it, although I can't sell you anything, but I can introduce you to people that do that and that sell that policy.
That being said, couldn't you work with somebody on getting the capital using those tactics, and then on the back end, they work with you in terms of investing into real estate?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I know people that have done that where they invest in or they buy these life insurance policies. It's not all life insurance policies. It's not through every company. So it is, and the policies have to be structured the right way. I would say most insurance agents don't know the right way to do it. But just like in every industry, there are niches, and so if you're interested in learning more, I'm happy to point you to a couple different insurance providers who are also in real estate that know exactly what I'm talking about. I've interviewed a few of them on my podcast as well, and among the wealthy, it's very common knowledge, but I would say probably half of a percent of the people actually know about some of these strategies, Steve.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to flip it around. You talked about your 401k initially. What would you say are some of the biggest? I'm going to peel back the curtain now and make you vulnerable. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes you feel that you've made along the way here so far?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I'm happy to answer it. I think the biggest mistake I made was not educating myself sooner. Now that doesn't mean you have to pay for some, coaching program, some mentorship, some mastermind.
Sure.
But, one of the things I did when I was younger was I watched a lot of movies. I, listened to the radio and things like that. Now that I'm older and wiser, I still watch TV and movies and listen to the radio, but I read a lot more, and really even more than reading, I listen to either audiobooks or podcasts, right? And now what I would say is don't just listen to podcasts, just to listen to them, figure out something that you're interested in. Maybe that's, what are some wealthy tactics and strategies that people use that you've never heard of? Go after that and just try to learn about that. Maybe you want to get into real estate. Go listen to real estate podcasts. But the biggest mistake I made was education. And, we talked about this a couple of months ago, Steve. I grew up the middle class mindset and middle class and work and all that, which, to be fair, that's how most people grow up. And it wasn't until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, actually, that my mindset totally shifted. And I feel like at that point, you mentioned opening the curtain and taking a look inside. I feel like a curtain was open, and that was an inside look to how the wealthy, a very basic inside look to how the wealthy operate. But then from there, just learning more. And, I think one of the things that, like, some people have probably heard about these strategies before and shut it off because they're like, oh, that's a scam. And to be honest, when I first heard about investing in apartments passively, I thought it was a scam. It wasn't until years later when I was like, okay, all right, let me look back into this, because I know people are doing it. Let me look back into it. And I came with the open mind, right? It wasn't let's prove Charlie or let's prove Steve wrong. It's like, okay, let's listen to what they have to say. And then, I listen to you, Steve, and then I'll go and maybe Google it and figure out, does this actually work, right? Are there other people doing this? And then come to find out, yeah, there's a lot of people doing it. One of the funny things too, which I learned using a whole life insurance policy and being able to borrow from that, CEOs and executives, they might not make a huge base pay, but they actually have most of the CEOs, executives, even coaches, like a professional sports coaches, they actually get insurance as their as part of their compensation. So they're doing it too, right? We've never heard
when you say insurance, what do you mean?
Life insurance. They get life insurance. They get these policies structured a certain way, and for me, I mentioned $100 a month for them. It's probably a few million a year, right? If I had to guess, where they're able to literally, get that job, they get a several $1 million policy. They're able to borrow against that literally the next day, while they're still getting interest and dividends on their policy, still have the death benefit. Now they're over here being able to take that, couple $1 million and now invest in something else. So it's insane how I think most people know, myself included. I'm not smarter than anyone, myself included, how little we know, but it's just learning about these strategies slowly over time will really open up your mind to all the possibilities that's really out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's the deal that they negotiate, but you can do the same thing on a smaller scale. But what I'm grabbing from you, Charlie, is it needs to be a mindset. You need to get into the mindset of being a sponge, learning as much as you can. It's a habit. You need to get into that habit. And I feel a lot of us say to ourselves, yeah, I'd like to, but come on, I'm going to invest the time. I could be doing fun stuff, but I'm going to invest the time in listening to podcasts and reading books and all that. And is it really going to do anything to help me out? And I'm getting from you, yes, it is. And it's going to come from all different places. You'll get a little nugget here from a podcast. You'll read something over here. And then it'll all start coming clear. All the pieces come together. And then you can take what you've learned and then talk to somebody like yourself and back that up. Get it verified. Yeah, you can actually, I learned today, you take a loan against your 401k. Never knew that. I thought it was just a 403b. And yeah, wow. So, I just learned something there. And I'm actually, the wheels are turning in my head.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems relatively safe. If you take a piece of it, then your investment plane is on its runway, and you got a better chance of taking off.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I know we've talked about it for a few minutes. Love to do a much deeper dive next week as well. And I'm happy to share kind of everything that I've personally done, because I think I never had a mentor like this that talked really about mindset, right? And I think that has been the absolute biggest shift in my life, and it's really only happened over the last 3 or 4 years. It's not like I knew this, when I was a kid or in college or anything. And I think I finally started breaking out of that middle class mindset only a few years ago. But in those 3 years, not at all trying to brag here, but in those 3 years, we've been able to buy 5 apartment complexes, over almost 1,100 units valued at like $150 million. And that's not something I grew up thinking, hey, see that building right there? I'm going to own that one day. Never, right? I thought that was only huge institutions and hedge funds and billionaires. But really, Steve, the biggest thing that changed was the education piece. Not even the college degrees, right? Not even a high school degree, but the education, and then the mindset. Those 2 things right there have made absolute profound impact on my life and my financial future.
Amazing. Got seconds left, but I got to ask this question. With these investments, you've made them with others, correct?
Correct. All of them. Yes.
All of them. Okay.
Yep.
And these are people that you trust, but are some of them silent or unknown? I thought you had mentioned that before.
Yep. So there's typically there's two groups in these deals, Steve. There's the general partners, the active investors that find the property, underwrite the property, come up with a business plan, help with the rehab, and talk to the property management company every week, sometimes multiple times a week. And then you have the other group of the limited partners, also known as passive investors. They put their money in. We all put money into this big group. You have the small group of maybe, let's say, 8 people that are running the property, and then a group of 60 to 100 people
Really?
that usually never visit the property. Usually, you don't even know who they are. And so they're totally silent. And so, again, that's one of those things. When I first heard about being a silent partner, like, yeah, obviously that's a scam, obviously, but it's not. And there's a lot of people doing it.
And in one sentence or just a couple of words, did I hear you right? Did you say, tens, 20, 30 people could be silent investors in a property?
Yeah. I think the most we have is probably 85 or 90 in one deal.
Let's hit that next time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We skimmed that previously, and you even talked about the expectations on your return. Not going to be right away, but I didn't know it was that higher number. Wow, what's your website, Charlie?
Our website is hkigllc.com.
Learned a lot today, and I think an eye opener for a lot of us that do live paycheck to paycheck. You've been there. I've been there. I was even, top of my game, to be quite honest with you, and change things up because I wanted a change in my life, and I was living paycheck to paycheck. And this is going back probably about 17 years ago. So it's all relatable. And I will say this final thought here: doesn't matter who you are and what you're doing. I've worked with a lot of charities, and I'll never forget this line that somebody told me. But you never know what life is going to hand you. And all of us could be one paycheck away from being homeless. You never know. So
Right.
If you've got the capital, make it work to your advantage now, so you have, some nest egg there. Charlie, always great talking with you. Love the insight, and looking forward next time we get together.
Sounds great, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.